Oh, Manon, it was hell.
Oh, gosh.
I don't think I've ever said out loud I'm a failure. I've maybe thought it, but I've never felt it so deeply that I had to say it. And it was like this moment of, damn, I failed. I climbed off my bike and I sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe. I was really against there being a women's Tour de France, which is really unpopular.
Oh. Shemai Emma.
Shemai Manon.
And welcome back to What's Occurring Fam, brought to you by Rouvy, hosted by Pinarello.
And today we have an incredible guest on. I actually can't quite believe we have them on.
I can't quite believe it either. A absolute trailblazer for women's sport and sports media. We are going to be joined by the one and only Orla Chennaoui.
Let's have her on.
Let's do it. I'm so excited.
Woo!
Shemai, Orla, how are you?
Shemai.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you both? It's lovely to see you.
Good. It's lovely to see you too.
Thank you so much for coming on the pod. We're stoked to have you on.
Oh, I'm delighted, honestly. It's like an absolute privilege. It's lovely. Thank you.
So you're finally back home after a very, very busy 5 weeks, is it?
Yeah. I was away for 5 weeks. Monday night, was my first night in my own bed in 5 weeks. Even saying that makes me feel really anxious, but it was all fine. But when I didn't really realise, I think, a lot of the time when I'm away, how long the stint is. And I was being really lucky. I was in London for the Tour de France, the men's Tour de France, and my family were able to come over for the second 2 weeks of the race. So I've been with them for a lot of the last 3 weeks anyway. So that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, it's a long time away from home.
And especially when you're on autopilot as well.
Yeah, you kind of get stuck in this circus, don't you?
Yeah, and it's so intense. And you don't realise that intensity is added to by the fact that you are away from home and you're outside of your natural environment. You don't have any of the home comforts, But I have been really lucky this year in particular. So for the 3 weeks of the Tour de France, I tend to stay in London or around London. That's where our studio is for TNT. I live in Amsterdam, so it means being away from home. But my mum and my mother-in-law are amazing at helping out with the kids. So this time around, my mum and my dad and my husband and my 2 kids and my dog were all in London for 2 of the 3 weeks. So it's as close to home as it could have been. And I also realise, if you spend a lot of time on the road, as you two have done an awful lot, home is sometimes a feeling more than a place. And if I've got my little family around me, I'm traveling. I'm like a turtle, I'm sort of traveling with my home anyway. So yeah, it could be a lot worse. It was good. It was a really good experience actually, but it's super intense.
And you're obviously just back from doing the Étape Femme, which was a huge challenge for you, wasn't it? First of all, how was it?
Oh, Manon, it was hell. It was,
oh gosh.
Honestly, it was so hard. It was so hard. And I'm still sort of trying to process that a little bit. So here's the thing. I was asked by TNT if I would ride the Étape for the Tour de France Femme because it was the first ever time they were doing an Étape for the women's race. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. And their thinking was, let's show that any old hag can start riding a bike and they'll be able to do it, right? So I've not ridden a road bike in 4 years. I didn't have a road bike when I said yes. I've got 2 kids. I've got a busy job. I travel a lot. And I thought, yeah, let's help empower people. Let's help inspire people. Except I was going through it and thinking, who do I think I am being able to do this? I'm trying to show it's possible and I'm not sure it actually is. The ride itself was it was the hardest thing I've ever done. I didn't know until the day before that we had this col de Plan Palais to take on within the first 5 kilometres. And I didn't realise until I'd finished it that it was a category 1 climb. I've never ridden a cat 1 climb in my life. So the first 20 kilometres of riding of the Étape were the hardest 20 kilometres I've ever done. And I still had 100 kilometres to ride and the Col de la Madeleine. It was horrendous.
Didn't they say that the women's was harder than the men's?
So apparently, right, so obviously it shouldn't, I don't say obviously, but it wasn't supposed to be because the men's had the Glandon, the Col de la Madeleine and La Plagne. But I spoke to, and ours had a Cat 1, a Cat 2, and the Col de la Madeleine, and we had 3,500 meters of climbing in 120 12 kilometers is what was advertised. I got to the start and it was 117.
Oh.
Wherever this extra 5 came
Oh.
from, I don't know.
Five.
I didn't sign up for that.
Yeah, well, exactly. Those 5 kilometers came to make an awful lot of difference. But the problem with our ride was that it was pouring with rain. So I woke up at like 20 to 3 in the morning and I was walking by a rainstorm outside. It was so noisy. So it was pouring it down before the start. And then throughout the day, it was just sort of off and on and really cold, really wet. And I spoke to a few people who'd done both rides and they said that the women's was harder. And I don't care if that's true. I'm going to take it
Yeah,
and I'm going to
take it.
run with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, you see, the men climbed one way up the Col de la Madeleine from the south side. We both did the south side from La Chambre. But they did the normal driving road, which is what I did on Zwift, and I was able to do it, and that was fine. And it's what I'd driven up twice to try to get it in my head. We started climbing around these back country roads, and I was like, hang on, I got a minute. I don't recognize any of this. And all those false flats that I'd noted in my head as points of relief weren't coming. They weren't coming. So it was a really, really like humblingly difficult climb. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. And I got off.
Maybe it was better that you didn't know what was coming.
Very true. Yeah.
That is true. And I actually, whenever I said yes to this challenge, I said that I know if I knew how hard it was going to be, I would say no. And so that's the ignorance, the bliss of ignorance. So I'll say yes because I don't know. But I kind of think I should have listened to my wiser self, knowing the reason I would have said no. But no, I mean, I'm really, really, really glad I did it. I'm really glad I did it. And I feel like I didn't actually realize I could dig as deep as I had to do that day, because genuinely, like 15 kilometers from the top of the Madeleine, when that false flat wasn't coming, I climbed off my bike and I sobbed so hard I couldn't breathe.
Oh, we've all been there. We've all been there.
Wow.
But I don't put myself into these places anymore. You know what I mean? I don't push myself beyond my limits. I get to my limit and I think, okay, there's my limit. And I can see it and I'll stop before I have to break through that wall. But with this, I couldn't stop because I had to find a way to get to the top.
You say it was like obviously challenging. Was it the physical or like was it the mental side?
It was the physical. So for the training, it was actually the mental side of it. And I was surprised by that. Like I did a lot of crying and training and I felt like it was free therapy. I say free, I paid for it in
Paid for
blood,
the
sweat
pain.
and tears. But I was surprised by how much my mind got in the way of training and the extent of my negative self-talk. I hadn't realized how bad it still is. But on the day itself, I'm so used to trying to talk my mind out of standing in my way. I don't know if I've ever really had to talk my mind into getting my body going. And that was, for me, the biggest challenge. And that was a shock because I wasn't expecting it. I didn't think physically that it would be that big of a physical challenge. I couldn't keep pushing the pedals up the Madeleine. And we got to, I think maybe there's this cut-off area, our last cut-off point, which is Saint-François-Longchamp, which is where my family was staying. It's 5 kilometers from the top. And we had to get up there by 3 o'clock. And my friend Rianne was pacing me all day. She's amazing. She got me to the bottom of the climb in good time. So at least I was able to climb the Madeleine. But some 4 kilometers from Saint-François, she told me that I wasn't going to make the cut-off from Saint-François up to the very top. And I was devastated. Like I've never, ever, I don't think I've ever said out loud, I'm a failure. I've maybe thought it, but I've never felt it so deeply that I had to say it. And it was like this moment of, damn, I failed. Like I've not done it. And I was so intensely embarrassed as well. I felt humiliated. I felt angry at myself that I'd thought I could do it, that I'd put myself in this position, that I'd given myself such little time. I was so broken. I wanted to just sit by the side of the road and huff. I just wanted to be like, throw my toys out of the pram, throw my bike on the road and just go like shake my fist at the universe and at myself. And then I was, my friend Rianne, she was like, well, yeah, the family's still up there. So we keep riding. So I got back on the bike just so I could see them. And as I started to pedal then the last couple of kilometers, then it started to sink in. And I was like, hang on a minute, row this back a wee bit. You know, you've gone deeper than ever before. You've kept pedaling today when you really, 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 really didn't want to. And you've gone through so much to get to this point. Like I had so many incidents along my training, so many, like I had an ambulance call out, I had burnout, I had lots of things happening. So to make it that far, I thought, actually, if I can make it to the top of this climb, if I can hug my kids, that is my finish line, and I'll be so, so proud. It makes you emotional even now.
Yeah, I feel a bit like...
Even making it that far is such a huge achievement, especially because it's such a hard, grueling event to do. I think you should be seriously proud. And especially like, you know, training for this wasn't really a priority. You've got a job, you've got kids. Like, how did you even manage to fit training in when it's really quite low on the priority list?
That's what was really difficult. And I hadn't really factored in how I was going to fit in the training. Like I thought, basically when I said yes to this and I said, listen, I can probably train twice a week. And I was told, yeah, that'll be fine. It's not. It's not. From a sounding start, twice a week is not fine. So I realized that I was going to have to train a lot harder than I had planned for. And so, I mean, most of it, like, you know, I'm training for the Alps. I live in the Netherlands, and I was just training twice a day. So I was training in the morning for 40 minutes, then get myself to the studio, doing the full studio, and then coming back again and training for another 40 minutes to an hour every day, just to sort of train through fatigue and build up my cardiovascular fitness. And yeah, it was really hard. And I hated that. I really thought I'd enjoy this whole process. And that's what annoyed me the most. A lot of the time, I just hated it.
I think it's really refreshing to hear like someone say that they don't enjoy it, because a lot of time you just hear people say, like, oh yeah, it was great, even though it probably wasn't.
Like the reality.
Yeah, the reality of it is, really refreshing to hear.
What was your longest ride before the actual event?
So, Rianne took me out for a few rides in the Netherlands. So I did a 70-kilometer ride here before the Tour de France, and then I got up to 100 kilometers. But that was like a full day ride, and it was such a big deal, and I felt so proud. I was like, yes, I'm ready for this. It's flat. It's pan flat. So I did 100 kilometers, and then I went to London for the Tour de France, and I managed to get in a 70-kilometer ride around Richmond Park. So I was basically doing laps and laps of Richmond Park, and I had planned to do another 100k there, but it was pouring with rain the day I wanted to do it. And here's me thinking, well, I need to train for the heat, not the rain. So, but yeah, I'd done 100 kilometers as my max, and I'd done that once, and then I'd done 2 70-kilometer rides and 140.
That's good going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not a lot though.
Would you do anything like this again?
Oh, here's the really annoying thing. Yes.
Oh, is there something?
Yes,
oh,
it
no.
would.
Well, she has to make it.
Have you already signed up to something else?
Is there something?
No, not yet. Not yet, because we're finally taking a family holiday. So we're having our first 2-week family holiday in years. So I've just arrived back from France. I'm getting unpacked and getting repacked for that. And then as soon as I come back from the holiday, I'm going the next day to the Vuelta. So I've got another 5 weeks away from home. So I don't want to think about setting any new challenges until I've properly gotten this one out of my system. But as I was riding, this is the stupid thing about our brains, isn't it? I was riding the Madeleine, and I say riding, I might have been riding at the time. I might have been shaking by the side of the road. I might have been pushing that bloody bike up the climb. But I remember clearly thinking, I am never signing up for something so stupid again. Never. And I've held on to that for a good hour, I think, after I finished. And then I was like, you know what? Maybe if I did more training, this could be a bit of fun.
It is that thing. Like, there's so many things that I finished. I'd be like, I hated every minute of that. I'm never doing it again. And then the next day, I'm like, actually, I think I actually really enjoyed that. I'm going to put myself through that again.
What is that? Why do we do it?
I don't know.
Maybe because you, like you said, like if you trade, like this, the what ifs or the unknown.
Yeah.
And like it's, I guess we all have it. Like you did, like you have been an athlete, and we all have that sense of wanting more or having that drive or doing something. And I think, it's really weird though. You hate something, then you're like, oh, I just want to do it again.
Yeah, I tell you what, actually, what I did really love, like I did enjoy a lot of the day, actually. I did, after that Cat 1 and the descent off the back of it, there were bits like I felt like I was getting stronger as the ride went on, which said to me, I haven't trained enough. If this is, I'm actually training for the Col de la Madeleine as I'm riding towards the Col de la Madeleine. But I did enjoy a lot of it, and Rianne stayed with me the whole time, and she made sure that I had fun. But what I really did love is once I'd had a hot shower and a change of clothes, and I realized that I'd finished what I had to do, the natural high I felt for the whole of the rest of the day and the next day. Like, I don't drink alcohol anymore, so I'm always seeking these natural highs, things that will make me feel an elevated sense of being. And for the rest of that day, I mean, I was singing, I was dancing as much as my limbs would allow. I was like, "Ooh, we're alive, we're in the mountains." So I think that's probably why I would do it again. But it's 5 months of hating training for like one afternoon of feeling good. So a lot goes into it. But yeah, I might well do it again. Yeah, or something like it anyway.
Did you manage to watch any of the Tour de France Femmes whilst you were out there as well?
Oh, this was the best. This was what made the day so incredibly special, because I should say the cutoff for the etape was so tight, because we were doing it on the same day as the race itself. So in the etape for the men's race, it's like 10 days or a week before the men come there. But for us, we had to get off the road in time for all the vehicles to make it up to the top of the Madeleine. So I had to clear that road quite early. But that meant, because we were staying up near the top, we got to then get ourselves dry and clean and warm and come back and watch the women doing it live in the village. Oh my goodness, it was just incredible. Because I thought to myself, like, this will be brilliant, and I'll be able to ride this climb, and then I will watch the women. I thought this would be like an experience that I will have where I'm here as observer watching these women going past, and my kids will get to see what the professional woman can do. I had no idea that I would actually be part of something so much bigger. I had no idea the level of celebration and festival and party that was going to take place on the side of that mountain. It was the most special thing I've ever seen in women's racing, and I've been involved in this sport. I mean, I helped start the cycling podcast Feminat in 2016. And back then you couldn't watch racing on TV, on YouTube. There were like 10 minutes highlights packages on the UCI's YouTube, and that was it. And to see the crowds on the side of the road and everybody knowing the riders and calling their names as they went past, and knowing that those fans were not there watching the women as a preamble to the men. This wasn't any kind of a warm-up event. They were there to celebrate the women's race, to cheer on the female athletes. And it was the most incredible goosebump, game-changing moment for me. It was sensational and just showed me how far this race in particular has come. And I felt so proud of the sport. Like, not that it's anything to do with me, but watching it from the outside, just so proud of how far it's come. It was beautiful.
I feel a bit emotional after that.
I know. We've been saying the same thing. The sport's come so far. And like, even for me as like a track rider, I love watching road racing. Honestly, it's amazing. And the Tour de Femmes has been insane. And this year watching it was incredible. And the fact there's 4 different riders that have won it now, and people are loving to watch women's sport, and I love it. And I just want young girls to be inspired by that.
We are delighted to be working with Rouvy on What's Occurring Femme, and we have a great offer for you. You can use promo code FEMMES, FEMMES, for an additional 30 days on top of the 7-day free trial.
This is applicable to new subscribers only.
Rouvy's on a mission to bring the indoors to the outdoors, connecting you with real routes from around the world to your home. And in the summer, you can utilise Rouvy to do specific training sessions or to hide from the heatwave.
Rouvy's new route creator tool also allows riders to upload their favourite loops onto Rouvy. Everyone can easily convert their own video into a virtual route to ride at home. We've got some big plans with Rouvy over the next few months, so watch this space.
And remember to use the code FEMMES, FEMMES, for an extra month on us when you subscribe for the first time.
I don't know if the listeners know this, but you grew up as a triple jump champion?
Yeah, I did.
Where did the
understand your hesitancy
side?
Because it's random as, isn't it?
I just wanted to get it right.
So random.
Yeah, I wanted to get it right. So you started as that. And where did the cycling come into it? How did you get into cycling? What was the draw to cycling?
I got into cycling through work. So I was a sports fanatic as a kid, like fanatic. And I did athletics 3 to 5 times a week, gymnastics, trampolining randomly. What other sports did I do? Irish dancing doesn't really count as a sport, but it's movement.
Can you give us a little demo of Irish dancing?
I was actually trying to teach my kids. I don't know why was I doing this. I was trying to teach them a basic jig on our drive down to the tap. I can't remember why I was doing this, but yeah, I can still do a jig and a heavy jig. Yeah, but maybe not in this environment. Maybe when I see you guys in person, I'll give you a little crash course.
I look forward to that.
And yeah, we were like, as a family, really, really into sport. Like, I was into Liverpool Football Club was my team, and Gaelic football was massive in our family. My mum and dad, but mum in particular, still obsessed with it. So sport was always a thing. But then I became a news journalist. So I did a degree in law and became a news journalist. And then they were advertising within Sky, where I worked, Sky News. They were advertising for an Olympics correspondent ahead of London 2012. And so I applied for that and got it. And that was my first introduction to sports reporting. And because the GB cycling team had been so successful in Beijing, I decided that cycling would be the first of the Olympic sports that I tackled. So I got myself to World Track Championships. Was it Poland or somewhere? I can't remember. And that was my first ever work trip for this Olympics brief. And I was like reading up about it, and I read Heroes, Villains and Velodromes by my dear friend Richard Moore, and that got me hooked on the whole track program. And then seeing that up close, I found absolutely fascinating. Like, I still love a velodrome. It's so magical and mysterious to me, you know? And then because I was doing that, Team Sky was about to launch, and I was the only person really within Sky who had any kind of a clue about cycling at that stage, even though it was mostly track. And so I was sent out to Tuscany to cover the signing of Team Sky's first ever riders. So it was Geraint Thomas, and who else signed then? Ben Swift signed then. I met Steve Cummings and Ian Stannard and met them in the hills of Tuscany and did this whole report. And in that year, then I went to the Giro d'Italia for the first time, and I was just hooked. So I got into it through work, but became very quickly obsessed with it. My brother is really, really into cycling, so he sort of helped me understand it an awful lot. And it's one of those sports where, like, neither of you may realize this, I guess, because you've grown up in it so much and you know it for such a long time. But if you come at it from the outside, it's fascinating because once you learn a little bit about it, you realize there's so much more to learn. And that becomes really interesting. And you think, oh, I don't get that yet. I don't understand that yet. And even the whole role of domestiques, you know, for most people outside the sport, it's flabbergasting. Why on earth would you sacrifice everything and work so hard when you've got no chance of glory and your mission is to finish this race? For me, it's like this microcosm of humanity. It's all of humanity encapsulated in one sport, from the leaders to the workers to the, you know, the highs and the lows as well of the sport that are so visible and so tangible. Yeah, it became my obsession very, very quickly.
And I feel like cycling's always changing, so there's always like something new to learn about it as well. So even now, like sometimes, even though I've like stopped racing, there's still like, when I go to races, someone will mention something and like a new way they're doing things. I'm like, oh wow, like I had no idea about that. And I think, yeah, you're amazing at what you do, and you just totally get it. But it does take a long time to understand it if you're not like in a team. Yeah.
Yeah, it does take a long time. And I enjoyed that. And I was grateful that I had the chance to do that while I was doing my day job, you know. So I was covering cycling, but I was covering all the other Olympic sports as well. So I didn't put myself in a position where I had to know about cycling for years, you know, years later. But yeah, it's a complex sport. But I do think as soon as you've got a bit of a hook in it, whatever that might be, then you don't need to understand all the rest of it. You'll keep watching it and you'll keep coming back for more. And that's always been my obsession with people, is trying to give them a hook, you know, trying to give them something to latch onto, whether it's a personality or some sort of a narrative thread with a team or, you know, a rider's trajectory. But as long as you get somebody hooked into one part of it, then they'll want to learn all the rest of it. And then we're just there to guide them through that, you know.
And you also work on a few other different sports as well. I always find it quite hard to, you know, talk about other sports or jump to another sport you don't know lots about. How do you manage to do that?
Well, my job isn't to be an expert. I'm not supposed to, I'm not a pundit. I'm not, I don't need to offer my advice, my opinion on what's happening. So, for example, I work in rugby. And my job is to facilitate conversation. It's to ask the right questions and to understand the right questions to ask. But I don't need to really understand more than anybody at home. I do to be able to craft that conversation. But my job is to ask the questions that people at home would like to know the answers to. So a certain level of ignorance is actually quite a good thing. And sometimes if somebody, I think, is too steeped in their sport, they forget to step back and they forget that actually it's about being the bridge between the sport and the person watching at home. And if you're too deep in it, you can forget that there are established elements to a sport that don't make sense to the person watching at home or to the new person to the sport. And so I always feel like I take my job as an outsider in that way really seriously, because I'm not supposed to be in the middle of it. With cycling, it's hard not to be. You know, I've been in it such a long time and I love it so much. It's hard not to have an opinion on things, but at the same time, my role is to step back from that opinion, allow the experts to have their say, provoke them, you know, and play devil's advocate, but always be that person who's explaining to the viewer at home, by the way, if you don't understand what we're talking about, this is what it means. But yeah, I'm not supposed to be the expert, which is good because I'm not.
What's your favourite sport to work on apart from cycling?
Well, I mean, I've been able to cover quite a lot and I've been really lucky. Like I've done MotoGP, I've done triathlon, I've done all the Olympic sports. I would say rugby is my favourite, and that's I was going to say it's lucky, but I've also managed to make that happen because I love rugby so much, you know? And my love of rugby, this is what I mean about hooks as well. My love of rugby didn't even necessarily come from the game itself. It was more what it represented to me growing up, because I was born in Northern Ireland at the height of the Troubles. And so everybody identifies as being either Irish or British and everything is divided. And I was brought up Catholic and very much Irish. And I find that sort of national dissonance quite difficult to deal with as a kid sometimes. In soccer, for example, in football, I remember the Republic of Ireland playing against Northern Ireland, and we would always support the Republic of Ireland. But I was saying to some of the boys in my class, I'd also quite like to see Northern Ireland do well, because that's where we're from. And they were horrified by me saying that, because most supporters of Northern Ireland would be unionists, would be Protestant. You know, it's the other side of the fence. And I just didn't like that. And rugby was that one sport that brought the whole, both sides together. And there were real heroes of the sport who were from Ulster, who were Protestant, who would have been unionist, but who were playing in this team together. And I loved that we had that opportunity to bring all people together and be stronger because of it. So that's where my love of rugby really came from, which is, I guess, as well speaks to what I see as the poetry of sport, you know, and the magic and the power of sport and what it actually means. Because it's never just about what you're watching, you know, or the participation. It's always about the wider resonance, you know.
And I also love on social media and things like that, you're very open, not just about the good parts of sport, and you're quite open about speaking about how you feel on social media and your opinions.
Yeah.
You create a really good gap for the listeners to be like, this is reality and it's not always good. And yeah, how do you go about that, and like, why is that like your view?
I think it's a really interesting time that we live in almost for that, because when I was growing up, sports coverage or any kind of television coverage was a real artifice. It was very much this polished performance, you know, and it was a perfection, you know, it was a finished article, if you like. And we didn't ever get any sense of reality, I think, through our media before, you know? And I think that can be quite dangerous, because we see other people presenting as though they've got it all together and they know what life is all about. And the reality is none of us have a clue what we're doing. None of us really have a clue what we're doing. And the more we pretend that we've got everything sussed, the more we're making it harder for ourselves, for a start, but for everybody else. And I just think I'm really lucky to live in a time where we can be a bit more honest. And whenever I started presenting, I was always copying, you know, and you have to. That's how you learn your trade. You sort of copy other people, or you copy other people's styles, or you follow a particular way of doing things. And I did that for such a long time. And I think I've got the advantage that I am a woman in a man's world. It's more, there are more women now, so many more women than whenever I started out. And I also have a different accent. So I was always going to stand out anyway. And I was never going to blend in and be an identikit presenter, because I can't. I'm not changing my accent. I chose up very early not to do that. And I can't change my gender, and I wouldn't want to. And I feel like I decided to sort of embrace that, really, and be honest about all aspects of it, because if I couldn't be like everybody else, I might as well show what I'm actually like. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if anybody buys into that or not. It doesn't matter if anybody gets it or not. It really, really doesn't. Because we'll all die. We'll all die, and it's done, and that's it. Nobody will remember whether they hated me or liked me, or no one will remember any of us really, really for very long at all. So you might as well live the fullest version of your own life, and you might as well live it on your terms, because otherwise you're just holding yourself back to try to fit in with others. And it's a wider question than just social media, and it's a wider question than authenticity on social media. It's more about how authentic we are in our lives. And I feel, so I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but as women, we are still so boxed in, and we are given particular roles at any given stage in our lives. And it's really easy to feel that you're falling short of that, or feel frustrated. You think, well, I don't want to have less fun now than I did in my 20s. I want to still be loud and annoying and dance until 5 a.m. if I want to. And you just realize, I think, the older you get, that you make your own rules through life. And if you follow somebody else's rules, that's fine. But that is your choice. You can, most of us in the Western world can choose to live on our own terms. And so that's just how I want to do it. And I want to share that on social media, because the more you see other people living life as they want to live, the more that becomes normalized, and the more you feel confident enough to do that for yourself. It's a really long answer, Emma, that maybe doesn't even come back to what it is you even asked me. But
and I feel this takes us quite nicely onto, we want to talk a bit about 10 Times Braver. I follow it on Instagram, and it has helped me so many times, just like so many little reminders of things that have popped up. But for some of our listeners that maybe don't follow, can you tell us a little bit about 10 Times Braver?
Yeah, thank you. 10 Times Braver is my passion project that mostly exists on Instagram, but I've done some real life talks and events, and I've become a breathwork instructor through it, because I find that so powerful. And I lead meditations and things. And I sort of try to share the hacks that I've learned to deal with my anxiety and performing in live television and in a high performance environment, also through sport, and apply it to daily lives. But the actual idea came from a question that I was asked, which was, what would you do if you were 10 times braver? And I was feeling a bit stuck in my life at the time, and I didn't really know where to go. And when he asked me that question, I thought it really hit me in the gut, because I felt like the ways in which I thought I was holding myself back until then were all external. So, I have the wrong accent to be able to make it further in my broadcasting career, or I don't have the connections, or I didn't go to that university, which was really important in my journalism environment at the time. And everything was external. Whenever he said, what would you do if you were 10 times braver? I realized, well, actually, blinking heck, there's a load I would do if I would just realize that power is within me. And even if the outward presentation of that wouldn't be very different, my approach would become very different, because I would realize I've got agency and responsibility for my own life, which is really important for us to realize. It's really important. And a lot of it is based on the Stoic philosophy, memento mori, which roughly translates as remember you must die, which sounds really morbid, but the other half of that is memento vivere. Remember, you must live. One day we don't get to do any of this anymore. One day it's done. It's done. And every day we have until then is an absolute gift to live in our own way, to be as big and as bold and as brilliant as you want, or as quiet and reserved and as introverted. But however you want to move through the world and move through your life, the important thing is that you're channeling into that. And I feel like if we could all live more bravely, and I use that term really loosely, because bravery can be anything. It can be taking on the challenge, like the attack that I've just done, but it can be being unapologetic in how you choose to live your life. And my life is, I live quite a traveler existence for a lot of the year. I don't need to explain that to anybody. I don't need anyone else to understand what my family dynamics are. But if we all learn to live more bravely and more committed to ourselves, we would all be happier. We would all be kinder, more compassionate, more tolerant, and the world would simply be better. So that's my very small part in that, my mission. It's true though, isn't it?
Yeah, I just love listening to this. Like, it just makes me feel like it's so true. Like, you only have one life.
Yeah.
And like, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks of you or how you look or what you say, or because your life at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter.
And I think it's so important to remember that we are all going to die. Like, this isn't going to last forever and it's going to be over. So make the most of it.
Exactly. And this is what I was trying to remember on the Col de la Madeleine. I was like, one day I won't be able to do this, but today I feel like I can't do it either.
Yeah,
exactly. Back to this podcast as you're going up it. You said that.
Yeah.
And there's also been like so many times, I think it was on your Instagram that I saw the box breathing.
Yeah.
I've done that so many times. It's been so helpful.
Isn't it brilliant? The simplest little hack, right? And I almost hesitate to say, like I've said, I've become a breathwork instructor, but we label these things breathwork, grounding exercises, meditations, whatever. If you just find a little way to connect yourself with the moment, you're able to stand back from all the stress, you're able to stand back from all that emotion, and you're able to tap into the power that you have. Like, we live in such a consumerized society of fear. Fear is sold to us on the daily. It's how the algorithm works. We are taught to be angry because that keeps us scrolling and scrolling. If we can stand back from that anger, if we can stand back from being sold that fear and realize that all of the power is within us, we don't need to buy our way out of this, it's all within us, then it really is a game changer. So box breathing I use a lot. I use it for any situation. If I need to calm down, if I need to energize as well. Like if I'm watching a Tour de France stage and nothing has been happening for 4 hours and I've got to go on television and sound really excited about this transition stage, I'll head off to the toilet, put the toilet seat down, and I'll box breathe for 5 minutes because it gets me grounded, it helps me to focus, and it helps that mental clarity. So if anyone has never tried it before, it's you envisage breathing around the corner of a box. So it's quite easy to look at a door or a window, even though they're not square. But you breathe in, I tend to do it for 4. You breathe in for 4, you hold your top breath for 4, you release for 4, and you hold the out breath for 4. And it is as simple as that, over and over. Isn't it though?
Yeah, even like before a race and stuff, yeah.
The US Navy SEALs use this before important missions to not only calm themselves down, but to heighten their focus. It's ridiculously simple, and I think we get to the stage where we think if something is that simple, it can't work. But actually, if we start to use it. So how have you used it, Manon, and what circumstances? How has it helped you?
Oh, I feel like I've used it so many different times. So obviously not to the scale that you do things, but if I'm like presenting something or doing something I'm a little bit nervous about and I'm like getting carried away and my thoughts are just kind of going everywhere and I'm overthinking, I use it then. But also sometimes, like if I'm struggling to sleep because I'm thinking about things, I'll do it to try and help me sleep, just to switch off. Anything before I'm like nervous about something. I feel like it works in so many different ways, in so many different scenarios. It's been really, really
they
good.
say breath work, especially for elite athletes as well. Like for us, when like a similar, like it's all similar and all relevant because what we do is really important to us in our own avenues. But like breathing and being really like at one with where you are and at peace, and like I think it's something I really want to look into because yes, we have psychologists who we speak to and it's all about how speaking, but like breathing is the easiest way to calm you down.
And sometimes you don't think about it. You don't think about how you're breathing, but then once you like take a minute and like calm down and think about it, you feel so much different.
Yeah. And it's something when you were speaking about it, I was like, damn, I want to start doing this
change your life.
In my sport. I just on the start line, just start breathing for my box. That'd be great.
Yeah. But it's this reminder as well that power is within you, and like I say, we keep looking, and especially these days, we're looking on social media for this next dopamine hit, where we're looking for whatever the latest trend is of a gadget to buy to make us feel better. But actually, the power we have to regulate our autonomic nervous system is phenomenal. And if we tap into that, I genuinely feel it's like a superpower. It's a superpower.
A reminder that today's show is hosted by Pinarello, and we're lucky enough to be in the Wilmslow store today. And me and Emma actually both love riding our F-Series bikes, don't we, Emma?
We do.
We went on a ride recently together, didn't we?
The cafe ride was really, really fun. And I've actually ridden a lot more on the road since having my new bike. It makes such a difference.
Do you love it? Yeah,
I absolutely love it. The white on the road against the kit is amazing. It's such a dream to ride.
This is your start of you becoming a road rider in the future.
No, guys, don't worry about that. But it does make a huge difference having a nice bike and being able to go out, I think. Yeah, it definitely makes it more enjoyable. It definitely makes you want to go out because you have this such a nice bike underneath you. And yeah, I do really enjoy it.
Don't just take our word for it. Head to your local Pinarello retailer and check out the whole range for yourself.
Search Pinarello Store Locator to find your nearest store.
Definitely. Changing the subject a little bit now, back to women's cycling. Obviously, you've been involved, well, I guess you've seen the growth of women's cycling over the years change dramatically. And I think we met very briefly at a Women's Tour of Britain stage, and you were in the car with, is it Bob or Tom? And it was the day I crashed, maybe?
Yeah!
And you were doing a podcast about it. Yeah. This was going back now.
That was you! Oh,
yeah.
That was oh my goodness, that was one of the most fascinating days I've had in the sport. Yeah.
Not for me.
I know the horror, because you were then spending a whole day trying to get back into the race.
Yeah, and I broke my hip as well. Yeah, and I think I was so far out the back that I was like with the police cars, and I think we somehow got back. Obviously, I did get towed by the car the whole time, but yeah, obviously, yeah, back to it. You've seen the growth of women's cycling.
Yeah,
Can you just explain like how much things have changed since, I guess, you came into the sport?
It's like a different sport. It really is. And I was thinking about this earlier before our chat. It's so easy to look at where we are now and where we want to be and complain about all the things that aren't yet good enough. But it's really important to look back at how far we've come in such a short space of time, because too quick an acceleration, too quick a growth isn't sustainable anyway. But I think the way it's grown has been phenomenal and a real privilege to see. So like I say, I co-founded the cycling podcast Femina in 2016 because that was the first year of the Women's World Tour. And back then, there was no way of watching women's racing. You couldn't watch any of it live. The big races, you could see a 10-minute, and it was just 10 minutes of highlights on the UCI's own YouTube page. Cycling News would often do a race report for the biggest races, but I feel like they're maybe done out of passion. And so they weren't given the same editorial polish that the men's race reports were. So it was just like a verbal sort of spew of everything that happened in the stage. There was no context given. There was no reading of the race. It was, such and such went on the attack and then they were reeled in, and then such and such went up the road and someone was dropped at the back, and it was very blow by blow. So even to put together our monthly episodes of the podcast took so much work and so much research and so much trawling through. And we did go to quite a number of races, and the Tour of Britain being one of them, which was brilliant back then, though, actually. And the support by the side of the road was always way beyond what we could see in any other races. So we were really, really lucky in the UK, I think. But the teams were small. There weren't very many. There wasn't the strength and depth of the peloton. Everybody would be in their little deck chairs. If you had a deck chair. I remember Marianne Vos sitting in a deck chair outside a little, was it a minibus or was it a van? It was a van at Getting Vevelgem, I think it was. And thinking, wow, she's just sitting here putting on her race numbers, it was mad. And the good thing about all of that was the accessibility to the sport was so direct, because there were no, I don't even think did we have press officers? I don't even think we did. We just contact the team bosses.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and just rock up and get in touch with the team boss and say, can we come and do an interview? Or just rock up to the race with an accreditation and ask the riders as they're sitting around, because, there were no buses to go on. If there was a camper van, they were lucky. And there certainly wasn't the fandom anything like what we have now. So I've also seen that whole growth and backlash, you know, in the growth of the noise around women's cycling, because you get people saying um, that it's tokenism, or that the racing isn't as exciting, or this really odd thing, I think, which is blaming other women for not supporting women's cycling enough, as though it's up to women to support women, when actually the majority of fans of women's cycling are cycling fans, and the majority of cycling fans are men. So we still have more male support than we do female support, and that's great. That's how it can be. That's no problem at all. But even you know, with the Tour de France Femme, which is now a huge success, I was really against there being a women's Tour de France, which is really unpopular. Yeah. Because and the UCI were not interested. They were being forced, it felt like, to even put on La Course, which was the one-day race within the men's setup. And then they expanded it to 3 days. But I remember going to one of the La Courses, and there were no signs around the village to say that the women were racing. There was no advertisement to say that the women's peloton was coming to town as well as the men's peloton. And I really felt like they were doing it because they had to, and they were being dragged into this space. And my take on it was much better to support the racing that's already there, and the races that are already established and that have a proper dedication and passion behind them, than forcing this lot to put something on. And I felt like it was almost setting us up for failure, because if it didn't work, they could go, well, you see, I told you so. We're not ready for it.
And I feel like they've tried so many times and it hasn't stuck.
Yeah.
With the Tour de France Femme, but I mean, fingers crossed this time it's here
Oh,
to stay.
this is night and day, night and day. And even within the first race, I willingly put my hand up and said I was wrong. I got it wrong. Thankfully, I don't have any kind of a powerful voice in this sport, because this is the best thing that can happen to the sport. My worry with it was always that it would take the focus of women's cycling, and that we'd forget about all these other races, which are amazing, you know, and also I just felt like the campaign for the racing sometimes overtook the races that we had, you know. So there were more news articles about the fact that we didn't have a Tour de France Femme than there were about the racing that we did have. And that really bothered me. I was like, give me your column inches, but dedicate it to the races that we have and the athletes that are racing already. But luckily, there were so many incredible women in particular who were dedicated to getting this through, to convincing the authorities, to convincing ASO that they had to put it on. And that's why whenever I was at the side of the road on a Saturday, as Pauline from Provaux had just attacked and was going up to the top of the Col de la Madeleine, that's why I felt so emotional. And that's what I mean by feeling this pride. Like, it's a misplaced sense of pride, because it's not my pride to feel necessarily, except that it's the pride of every fan to feel. To see where that has come from Marianne Vos sitting on a deck chair outside a minivan, to the crowds and the hordes of people cheering riders on by their name on the way up that climb, felt incredible. And actually, there was one moment, sorry, that's my dog barking in the balcony. There was one moment the night before the race came through that made me realise how much the game had shifted. I was walking my dog with my friend through this village, Saint-François, and we came across this grandfather and his grandson, and we got chatting. And they proactively brought up the Tour de France Femme and the fact it was coming to town. And I hadn't gotten to see the race that day. So I asked, you know, do you know what's happened? I got blow by blow from these men. What had happened in the race that day? The grandfather was a hardened Demi Vollering fan. He was singing her praises. The grandson was all for Pauline, but they were debating back and forward the tactics, what had happened on the road, what should have happened on the road. And I had this, and I've goosebumps now, even just thinking about it and talking about it. I had goosebumps thinking, this is where we need to be, where no one is forcing this narrative out of anyone. They're talking about this because the racing is incredible, and that's a wonderful place for us to be.
Yeah, it's honestly, this whole conversation is giving me goosebumps. But we've obviously looked at like where women's cycling's come from. I'm really interested. Where do you think it will be in like 5 years? Like, will we see more races? Will there be more teams? Like from the men's teams, will we have our own women's team? I don't know. where do you think it will be in 5 years? What do you think the next steps are for the women's sport?
Hope we don't see a whole load more racing just yet. I don't necessarily think we need it. I don't think we need to ape the men's calendar and copy that, because it's a mess for anyone coming into the sport. It's too much. And I think the men need to streamline, and if the men's was more like the women's calendar, I think the whole sport would be a lot better. I think we're going to see an awful lot more of the men's teams now investing in women's teams. They'll have seen the Pauline effect in particular at the Tour de France, and she stands out because, of course, she's the first French winner of the Tour de France in 40 years. And there's this quite amusing bit of conversation doing the rounds on social media about Ineos Grenadiers, and obviously they had her on their off-road team. They didn't want to start a women's team, and if they had, and she didn't have to go to visa, then they would have a Tour de France winner. So I think a lot of the men's teams will see that it's a drop in the ocean, financially speaking, for them to fund a women's team. So we'll see more men trying to start more men's teams, starting up women's teams. And I just think we're going to see the fruition of this generation of young girls who've been able to watch their heroes at the top level now coming through and competing. The likes of your Kat Ferguson's, she's a classic example of that age group now, where we're going to see riders coming through and being professional and at the top level from a much younger age. So I think in that respect, it might start to ape the men's side of things a little bit. We've seen much more older champions in women's racing. I mean, I've lived through when most of the women had to have I was going to say a second job, a first job, and cycling was their second job at best, or a hobby on the side. And so I think that's why we saw much more older champions. I think now we're going to see younger riders winning more because they're able to come through the ranks. There are ranks to come through, but we're definitely going to see more riders. We're going to see an even healthier state. We're going to see more sponsors understanding the value that they'll get in return for their investment. So we're definitely going to see more money coming into the sport. And I hope that we're just going to see that fan base growing. And I'm really, really confident that it will. Like, if you're asked to ask me what I think will happen in men's racing in the next 5-10 years, I'd be an awful lot less clear and probably less optimistic as to where that's going to go. But in women's racing, I'm really, really positive about how it's going, where it's going, how quickly it's going. And I don't think it's growing too fast either. But I think the next 5 years in women's racing are going to be really, really exciting. And we're going to look at a totally different landscape again in 5 years' time.
And I think the big question is that everybody's talking about the Tour de France Femme in the years to come. Obviously, it's 9 stages now. What do you think is the next jump? Like, is it going to go to a point where, they're going to have a rest day in the middle and it's going to be longer, or is it going to stay at 9 days? What do you think should happen?
I'd like to see it slightly longer. I don't for 1 second think or want it to be a 3-week race.
It's too much of a jump.
It's too much. You would never invent that now. Ridiculous.
We need our own avenue.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think if we added an extra couple of days, 2 weeks probably feels maybe a bit too much. I don't know, 12 days. But I do think it'll get longer, and I do think we'll have a rest day in the middle. And I kind of hope that's not too soon, because again, the teams aren't big enough yet to be able to support all the racing that we have. We still see riders putting their names down for the start of a race that they're not going to turn up for, just so that the team will have the full roster. We need bigger teams first, and then I do think the Tour de France will become longer. But I think you're looking at 2 weeks max. But 10 days I think was traditionally seen to be an ideal number of days, and that's only 1 day away. So whether they would add a rest day in, I don't know. But then you've got an 11-day event.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they do.
I'm excited to be on board with it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Orla. It's been so insightful to hear everything from your point of view. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Honestly, I've loved it.
Oh, thank you both so much for having me. I really, really loved it. Thank you. And good luck with the podcast. It's brilliant. Really brilliant.
Thank you very much. We can't wait to see what your next cycling challenge is going to be.
Yeah, watch the space.
I'm sure I'll be sharing the misery on social media.
We can't wait. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. Bye.
Thank you. That was insane. I have no words.
That was so good. I love Orla so much. She's She's so great for the sport.
I could listen to her. I was just sitting there listening.
I think we could probably do a 3-hour episode with her.
Easily. Like that, I have so many questions based off the back of that, and like
maybe we should have a second episode with her.
Yeah,
Maybe
part
suggest
2
that.
because just so inspirational for women's sport. And she has so much knowledge.
So much.
And passion. I love her passion.
Yeah.
Like her passion for the sport, for what she does, for where she thinks it, honestly. Yeah, so good. And
so great.
I hope everyone listening enjoyed, and maybe we'll get a part 2 hopefully.
Yeah, I think we should.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for listening, everybody. And 12 out.
Hwyl fawr.